So for this topic on your land, building, and machinery, we look into your directly attributable costs. We look into your directly attributable costs, particularly for your land, building, and machinery. So before we said under your introduction that the cost of a property, plant, and equipment includes your purchase price, plus directly attributable costs, plus your restoration costs. Now we're done with your purchase price. We know all the items of purchase price. We already know the different modes of purchases. We also know how to measure already your restoration. We go here with your directly attributable cost. We give a general definition for your directly attributable cost last meeting as your cost necessary for the present location and condition of the asset. Okay, present location and condition of the asset. Now, here in this particular topic, we look as to your specific items of directly attributable costs, particularly for land, building, and machinery. If ever problems pertaining to land, building, and machinery pertains to your proper classification of costs, so you are given several costs you're given several costs and you need to classify it if it's part of land, is it part of building, or is it part of machinery, or it is just an expense. So normally questions on land, building, and machinery provides you different costs. You just need to look at the amounts for land, for building, and for machinery and item of expense. So we start with the cost of land. So if ever you want to memorize these items, our mnemonic here is bid, stop, and clear. So we start with letter B. We have your brokerage commissions or fees. So these are the fees paid to the broker or brokerage of the selling of the lot. So normally, if you are a purchaser and you paid the broker's commission, you add that to the cost of the land. So if ever you purchase it and you paid for the broker's commission, you add it to the cost of the land. Next, you have your improvements of permanent character. Take note, the character of the improvement here must be permanent. Because if the permanent is only temporary, we do not include it as part of your cost of the land. And what are those improvements? We have your grading or leveling. Actually, grading or leveling are almost the same. However, for grading, they normally grade for your cost of the building. We place it on the land, but if ever we use it purely for the land, we use the word leveling. For leveling, ipapatag natin yung lupa. So, ganun yung leveling. Patag natin yung lupa. So, of course, you cannot make use of the land, especially if you want to build on that land without leveling it. Kasi kung bulubundukin yan, baka mahirapan kang mag-build. So, you can level it. Next, you have your draining cost and filling the land. So, what is the difference between a draining cost and the landfill? In your draining cost, this is like your alam nyo yung sa ginawa nila sa mga bundok yung mga bundok sa Cebu para i-transport ata yung dolomite something. So dinine-drain nila yung bundok ng dolomite sand para mailagay somewhere. So yung nilagyan, we call that landfill. Yung binawasan, we call that draining. Okay, so binawasan, draining, dagdagan yung lupa, landfill. Next, we have your survey cost. So the cost of surveying your property or your land. Normally, this is done by your geodetic engineers. So the cost of survey is part of your cost of the land. Paano ba natin malalaman na may survey cost? Alam niyo yung mga ganon, mohon ata ang tawag doon. So, for example, this is your land, tapos parang may mga pabilog na ganyan, tapos may nakalagay dito na parang characters. So, yun yung tinatawag na mohon. So, tinitignan nila yung areas niya ng lupa mo, lahat ng sides niya. So, yun. We call that also survey cost. Next, taxes unpaid up to the date of acquisition assumed by the buyer. Take note of all of these expenses. Kanina nasabi ko rin naman, yung broker's commission, if ever it is paid by the buyer, then it is added. If not, then it is not part of the cost of the land. Because if the seller paid it, then it's the cost for the seller. Sir, how about if the seller paid it but reimbursed by the buyer? So long as it is necessary for the use of the land, then we include it. So in this case, we have here taxes, but take note, taxes should have been paid by the seller. But if it is assumed by the buyer, then we include it. And take note of the date. It is from the date of acquisition. So we have here your date of acquisition. Prior the date of acquisition, whatever is unpaid by the seller is on the account of the seller. You will only have ownership on that property at the date of acquisition. Therefore, taxes on that particular real property will only be assumed by the buyer at the date of acquisition. So take note here at the date of acquisition. So what do we mean by taxes here? We talk about your real property tax. So the real property tax in case will only inure to the buyer at the time of date of acquisition. Next, you have your option cost to buy the acquired land. For your option cost, not all option costs should be included as part of your cost of the land. You will only place option costs in case the option contract is exercised. Okay, so you have here an option to buy a land. If you exercise that option and you paid a cost on that option contract, you will include it as part of your cost of the land. But what if your option contract is not exercised? If the option contract is not exercised, what we will do is to place it as part of your expense. Of course, purchase cost will be included. Next, you have your mortgages, encumbrances, and interest on such mortgages assumed by the buyer. So here we assume that these mortgages, encumbrances, and interest will be assumed by the buyer. If the mortgage will remain to the seller, if the mortgage will remain to the seller, it will still be part of your seller, therefore not part of your cost of the land. But if it is assumed by the buyer, then we will include it. Next, we have your clearing cost of unwanted old structure, less proceeds from salvage. So whatever structure is included on the land, if ever we will remove it, the cost of removing those structures will be part of your cost of the land. Less proceeds from salvage. But take note, we are only to use the land here. Take note, you remove those unwanted old structures to use the land. Nasundan? You remove those old structures to use the land. But if you remove the old structures for other purposes, then it is not attributable to the land. It must be necessary for the present location and condition of the land. So kung meron structure dan, tinanggal mo para lang magamit talaga yung lupa na yan, then cost of the land. So a while back, we're talking about your clearing costs. Take note, guys, this clearing cost must be for the present location and condition of the land. So ibig sabihin nito, kailangan tinanggal mo yung mga structures para magamit mismo yung land. Pero kung iba yung rason para tanggalin mo yung old structures dun sa land, hindi siya idadagdag sa land. Okay? So makikita nyo mamaya pagka gagawa tayo ng building, tapos may tatanggalin na iba dun sa land, let's say may building or structure doon sa land, tapos sinanggal natin yung structure na yon, makikita nyo kung anong effect niya naman sa cost of building. So take note dito, yung clearing cost talaga must be attributable to the use of the land. If not, then we do not include it. Okay, so to the use of the land. Take note also, this must be included net of proceeds. It must be included net of proceeds. Next, we have your legal fees and other expenditures for establishing clean title. Normally, this legal fees and other expenditures is done after purchase of the land, and you need to establish your ownership over the land. So normally pagka binili mo yan, tapos let's say there is a cloud on your title, so may adverse claim, parang ganon. So may ibang nagclaim dun sa lupa mo. So to establish the clean title, meaning para sa'yo lang talaga yung pangalan ng titulo at wala ng gulo-gulo, those are different expenditures incurred on in connection on that particular uh, establishment of clean title, we include it. But normally, it is only known as your legal fees. It is only known as your legal fees, and the main purpose is to establish your clean title. Next, we have your escrow fees on the land. So what is an escrow fee? Actually, they say escrow fee is like a broker fee. But in broker fee kasi, the main difference of a broker fee and a escrow fee, pag broker fee lang kasi, babayaran mo lang yung broker kasi inayos nila yung transaction nyo between the seller and the buyer. But in your escrow, you have here a buyer and the seller, but the escrow will hold the property in trust until such buyer can pay the amount that is demanded by the seller. So dito, parang may holding in trust. Yun yung difference nila. So may babayaran ka lang din, pero because the papers are held in trust by an escrow. Normally uh, banks are escrows. Normally banks are escrows. What else? Real estate companies also do escrows. So the difference between broker binabayaran lang talaga because of arranging the transaction between the buyer and the seller. But in your escrow, there is a holding in trust until such buyer or such seller meets the condition on the sale of the real property. Next, we have your relocation or reconstruction costs. So, what is this relocation or reconstruction cost? Normally, narinig nyo to pagka merong mga illegal settlers, you pay them what the relocation cost or reconstruction cost, then we include it. So take note, you induce them to vacate the premises. You induce them to vacate the premises. By the way, guys, if ever you purchase property, it doesn't mean that if you purchase property, you can just get the possession of the property. This is a tip coming from me. Why? Because my basta. Yon, pagka bumili ka ng property, halimbawa may ibang nagstay doon, huwag kayo agad na parang paalisin na lang agad yung mga tao doon. Tapos, sige, bulldozer nyo na lang kasi pupunta na kayo doon sa property. No. Because possession and ownership is different. Possession and ownership is different. So, ibig sabihin, possession, may ibang gumagamit ng lupa mo. Pero ikaw yung may-ari. So, kung gusto mo siyang paalisin doon, kailangan paalisin mo siya in a legal way. Hindi pwedeng paalisin mo na lang agad-agad. Kasi ang mangyayari, may right yung nagpo-possess niyang property na yan bago mo dapat sila paalisin. So, sa atin naman, how do we account for that binabayaran natin to vacate the property? We call that your relocation cost or a compensation fee. Those relocation or compensation fee should be included on your cost of the land because without them vacating the land, you cannot make use of the land, okay? So if ever you will purchase property soon, these are the different things that you need to look at. So if ever your property may cloud, parang may na-annotate, normally kasi mababasa nyo, for sale land, clean title, mga ganon. Paano pagka clean title? Ibig sabihin walang encumbrance at all, walang naka-annotate dun sa titulo. Pero kung may naka-annotate dun sa titulo, ibig sabihin hindi siya clean title. So what do you need to do? You need to establish the clean title. So you have legal fees. So how will you treat that? You treat that as a cost of the land. So let's say there is someone who fixed the transaction between between the seller and the buyer on that land. So that can be a broker fee or a escrow fee or an escrow fee. Then you can include it. So relocation costs also can induce other people to vacate the land is still included on your cost of the land. And finally, your registration fees and transfer of title. So for your registration fees and transfer of title, here your seller will already transfer the title of the property to your name. And normally, ikaw na buyer ang magbabayad nitong registration fees. So you will include it as part. We go now to improvements. So a while back, we said that your improvements must only be of permanent character. So what are permanent improvements? These are permanent improvements. So we have clearing, grading, leveling, and subdividing. Sir, we have a new term here, subdividing. What is subdividing? So when we say subdividing, if this is the whole lot, we divide it in different portions. So let's say we want to divide it in 4 portions. So if you divide it on your 4 portions, the cost of dividing the lot into 4 portions is called subdividing. Sir, how about if I have 2 lots and I want to make it a 1 lot? We call this one as consolidating. So we consolidate your lots, lot 1 and lot 2, to make it as 1 lot only. Okay, so take note, only of permanent improvements must be included as part of your land. But what if the improvement is a temporary improvement or uh, an improvement not considered permanent in character, such as your fences, water systems, drainage systems, sidewalks, pavements, and landscaping. So these are all temporary improvements. Over time, mawawala kasi ang mga yan. Sir, bakit yung leveling at subdividing at grading, hindi ba nawawala yan? Hindi, kasi nandun na siya sa lupa talaga. Yung subdivision mo, yan na talaga siya. Guys, when I say subdividing, hindi yung subdivision ni Villar, but we divide the lot talaga. Okay, so on your outdoor improvements, this type of improvements, we need to look whether it is part of the blueprint of the building or not part of the blueprint of the building. Because these guys are done because of your construction of a building. Normally, you do not incur this cost for the land. You do not make water system for the land. You do not make sidewalks for the land. Normally, these items are done because of the construction of a building. Now, in the construction of the building, you look at these improvements if it is part of the blueprint. When we say blueprint, it is part of the plan in the building. So it must be included in the plan of the building. If it's included in the plan of the building, then it is part of your building. If not, then it is part of your land improvements. So take note of the treatment of your particular improvements. Permanent in character, include them in your land. If not, then if it's part of the plan of the building, building. If not part of the plan of the building, land improvement. Anyway, these items are all part of property, plant, and equipment. But again, when we classify your property, plant, and equipment, you will be asked on a line item basis. So land, building, and land improvement. So in case, guys, although tama naman yung cost ng PPE mo, but if you will not properly allocate it on a proper account, let's say land, building, and land improvement, nagkamali ka ng allocation, dapat for building siya na ilagay mo sa land, mali pa din yung amounts natin. Okay, so ingat talaga dito sa classification of costs. Other treatment of land account. So we look now on your other treatment of land account. So first, if the land is acquired and held for speculation, it is classified as an investment. So we call this one your investment property. Investment property. Next, if the land is held by a real estate concern for resale, it is under your inventory. But if it's held for sale, it is classified as non-current asset held for sale. Okay, so we have 4 items of classification of a land. A land under PAS 40, investment property. Next, a land that is held for resale under PAS 2, we say it is inventory. Next, it is held for sale, non-current asset held for sale under PFRS 5. Non-current asset held for sale, and then land account only under PAS 16. So how many classifications of land should we look into in this particular slide? We have 4. PAS 40 investment property, when? If it's acquired and held for speculation. Next, we have your PAS 2 inventory. And then we have your non-current asset held for sale. What is the difference under PAS 2 and PFRS 5? Although both are for sale, in your inventory, it is your normal course of the business. It is your normal course of the business. While in your PFRS 5, it is based on your plan or commitment to sell a non-current asset. A non-current asset. So under PFRS 5 yan. Non-current asset held for sale. So again, in past 2, this is a sale based on your normal course of the business. You are holding the land for sale in the normal course of the business. Normally, this is for your realty companies. While a land held for sale will only be classified as non-current asset held for sale if that is not your normal course of the business. Now, if your land is within the definition of your PAS 16, it is for rental to others, for administrative use, or for the use of your production or supply of goods, then we say that is under PAS 16. So it is important to look on the purpose of your property. Is that investment property, inventory, non-current asset held for sale, or your land? This is in consonance on your practice already. Pero kasi sa atin, sa academic, dito sa academy muna, hindi natin tinitignan yung proper classifications ng mga property. Pwede pa sa theoretical, pero sa problem solving, hindi naman. Pero sa practice nyo, kailangan alam nyo kung kailan siya magiging investment property, inventory, non-current asset held for sale, at saka part of your land under PAS 16. Okay? So we have 4 treatment on land account. Next, you have your special assessment on your land account. A special assessment is included as part of your cost of the land. Part of your cost of the land. What is a special assessment again? This happens if the value of the land increase because of your improvements made by the government. So for example, ito yung lupa mo. Yung lupa mo, napakaliblib na lugar niyan. Napakaliblib na lugar niyan. Tapos suddenly, naglagay ng highway dyan yung government. And because of this highway, what happened to the value of your land? The value of your land increased. Kung dati, let's say, ang per square meter niya is 1,000 per square meter. Pero because of that particular improvement made by the government, the value of your land increased to 15,000 pesos per square meter. Kasi nasa national highway na daw siya. Okay. So because of the increase on the value, the government assesses the company for a special assessment. This is one of the powers of your BIR to specially assess in cases of increase in land valuation. Diba? Anyway, hindi naman ako yung tax na. So yan. In case na may increase ng value, special assessment. Yun ang tawag dyan. So we place it as part of your cost of the land. We go now to your cost of purchase building. So for your building, take note, for building, we will talk about 2 items of directly attributable costs. We have your cost of purchase and for your costs under your self-construction. Sir, how about a land? Wala bang self-construction? We cannot self-construct land unless that is for dolomite. Anyway, cost of purchase building. So what are the items of cost purchase building? So our mnemonic here is TIP LRT. So the first one is taxes unpaid up to the date of acquisition assumed by the buyer. Taxes ulit, but take note, it must be assumed by the buyer. I'm placing emphasis on the assumption of the buyer. Because without assumption of the buyer, take note, you should not include it as part of your cost of the building. Again, we have here your interest, liens, and encumbrances. The same with your land, diba? Ito yung mga mortgage. But take note, it must again be assumed by the buyer. Purchase price, of course, we include that. Legal fees and other expenses, of course, we include that. This one is new for your purchase of building. So the cost of renovation or remodeling. But take note, you look whether that particular cost of renovation or remodeling is okay for the conditions suitable for the use of that property or for that building. So it must be for the present location and condition of the building. If not, then we do not capitalize it. And lastly, we have your tenants paid to induce them to vacate the premises. So this is also present in part of your cost of the land. So ito, meron to sa cost of the land, ito meron din sa cost of the land, meron din to sa cost of the land, ito meron din, meron din. Ano lang yung bago dito na cost na para sa building natin? Ito. Okay. So ang problema kasi dito, sir, paano kung may taxes unpaid up to the date of acquisition which is assumed by the buyer? Tapos may legal fees and other expenses, may tenants paid to induce them to vacate the premises. So ang problema kasi dito, paano pag bumili tayo ng land and building? Sabi natin, etong items na to ay kasama rin sa cost of the land. So paano natin yan i-allocate kay land and building? If the cost is allocable to land and building, the same land and building. So meron siya kay land, meron din siya kay building. Pag yung cost na yun allocable to both, then you allocate it using the relative fair value. Sir, paano yung gagawin namin? So, kunin nyo yung value niya. So, let's say the value of your taxes unpaid is 300,000. If you cannot really allocate it based dun sa land and building mismo, you allocate it using relative fair value. Okay, again, guys. You look at this cost. This 6 costs, almost all of these costs are the same with the cost of the land a while back. What is new here is the renovation and remodeling cost, which is only attributable to the building. But 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and number 6 is included also on the cost of the land. So the problem here is, what if we purchase land and building at the same cost? How will we allocate this similar cost which is attributable to land and building? We allocate them using relative fair value. Take note, if the cost is similar or attributable to both land and building, you will still allocate it. Hindi lang yung taxes unpaid ibibigay kay land. Pwede rin natin yung ilagay kay building. Yung interest, yung mortgage, yung encumbrance, pwede rin natin ilagay kay building. Nasusundan? Okay. So, if the cost or direct cost is unique to one property, allocate it only to that property. If the cost is allocable to certain properties, then you need to allocate it using relative fair value if in case you cannot really allocate it directly to the properties. Nasundan? Okay. How about a cost of constructed building? So our mnemonics here is space SIP. So first, you have your superintendent fee. Next, you have your permits and licenses on building construction. Guys, before you build a building, you must have necessary permits and licenses. I don't know if ever you see this in instances of construction of a building there or here in Baguio. Maybe you can see it na parang meron malaking tarpaulin, tapos parang boys na nakalagay, tapos based on permit, blah, 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 ganon. Tapos architect, blah, 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 engineer, ganon, may nakalagay. So those are in connection with your permits and licenses. So before they can really build, they must be first permitted by the government authority. Architect fee, of course, you will include it. Alam naman na natin yan. Construction cost, of course, we will include it. Direct material, direct labor, and overhead. Excavation cost, of course, we will include it. Guys, ito yung main problema ko sa mga estudyante ko before. They place excavation cost on land. You place excavation cost on building. Kasi although ang hinuhukay mo yung lupa, tama naman yung sinabi sa akin ng estudyante ko, na, sir, di bang hinuhukay natin lupa? Bakit ilalagay natin yan sa building? Oo, hinukay mo yung lupa. Pero para saan ba yung paghuhukay mo doon sa lupa? Hindi ba para maglagay ng building? So, di ba, ang lagi kong sinasabi sa inyo, kailangan lahat ng cost na i-allocate natin dito sa land, building, and machinery must be necessary for the present location and condition of the asset. So dito sa excavation, hindi naman tayo nag-excavate ng lupa para gamitin yung lupa. Nag-excavate tayo ng lupa para makapagtayo ng building. So what is the purpose of your excavation here? To erect or to construct the building. So take note, excavation cost should be included on your cost of the building. It is not part of your cost of the land. Uulitin ko, although ang binubungkal talaga natin ay lupa, pero nagbungkal tayo ng lupa para makalagay ng building, hindi para gamitin yung nabungkal na lupa. Okay? So it's not for the land, it is for the building. Next, you have your demolition costs of all building and all structures, less proceeds from salvage. Okay, so I place emphasis here before in your land. Kanina kasi, yung demolition cost natin, it is for the use of the land mismo. So for example, may malaking bunkhouse dun sa lupa. Tapos balak mong gawin siyang agricultural land. Tinanggal mo yung building na yon. For the purpose of what? Gamitin yung lupa lang. Tama? So yung pagtanggal ng property is for the land. Take note, the purpose is for the use of the land, yung kanina. Dito naman yung demolition cost natin, kailangan you remove items on the land because you will make another building. So tinanggal mo yon para sa building. So the use here is for the building, not for the land. So for example, there is a bunkhouse again on that land. You remove that bunkhouse to create a higher building. So what happened? What is the purpose now? The purpose is to create a new building. Therefore, you attribute that cost of demolition to the building. Yung isang example natin kanina, may lupa, may bunkhouse. Tinanggal natin yung bunkhouse para gamitin natin siya as agricultural land. Ano yung purpose? To make use of the land. This one naman, to create a new building. So ingat kayo sa demolition cost. Not all demolition cost is attributable to the building itself. It can be attributed to the land also. Next, we have here a service equipment and fixtures made permanent part of the structure. Take note of the keyword. Must be a permanent part of the structure. It must be placed on your building itself. So for example, yung mga ladders dun sa fire exit ninyo, so those are permanent fixtures which is already considered part of the building. They are not considered as furnitures and fixtures, but they are included as part of the building. So tignan nyo dapat if it's really part of the structure or not. Next, we have your interest on construction loans and insurance. Alam na natin yan, guys. Yung interest on construction loans, these are your borrowing costs. Insurance costs on the building. Insurance costs on the building. Take note, that insurance cost must be for the construction of the building only, during the period of construction on the building. Next, you have your temporary buildings used as construction office and or tools, materials, or shed. So in case you create a temporary building or hut for your construction while the construction is in progress, we still place that cost on your cost of constructed building. Why? Because without those temporary buildings, walang paglalagyan ng mga tao mo, walang paglalagyan ng materials mo, and of course, you cannot construct the building based on your timeline pag wala yung mga temporary buildings na yan. Okay, so ano lang yung talagang maninibago kayo dito sa cost of constructed building. Okay yung superintendent, okay yung architect, okay halos lahat. Except demolition cost. Ano yung titignan natin sa demolition cost? Kailangan it is for the new building. Kailangan it is for the purpose of the new building. Because if it's not for the purpose of the new building, we do not include it. What cost should we include? The demolition cost. Net uli yan, net, because we need to deduct the proceeds. We need to deduct the proceeds. Okay, so this one I already told you, land and building acquired. So if that land and building is acquired in a lump sum price, how do we account for it? So before we say, if both fair values are known, relative fair value. But if only one fair value is known, what do we use? We have your residual approach. But take note, we have an exemption to this allocation. What is the exception here? You will not allocate any value to the building, therefore building will be zero if the building has a minimal value. Minimal value. What is minimal depends on the value in the problem. So for example, ang total value is 500,000. Ang allocable lang kay building ay 20,000. The building now, it has very minimal volume. We will not allocate anything to that building. Okay? So, normally the problem will tell you it has a minimal value, or you will see based on the amounts na masyado nang mataas yung naibigay doon sa land, masyadong mababa yung sa building. Pag masyadong mababa yung building, you consider that as already at minimal value. So what do we do if ever the building has a minimal value? Do not allocate a cost to the building. Do not allocate a cost to the building. Everything is to the land account. Everything is to the land account. Again, any purchase cost and directly attributable costs. I'm not only talking now of your purchase cost, I'm also talking about directly attributable costs. We have already checked a while back the 5 items that is similar between land and building as to the purchase of your building. So in case this similar cost or directly attributable cost is attributable to land and building, take note, you allocate it also. You allocate it also. Okay? So, mag-ingat dyan yung directly attributable cost, pag pareho meron sa land, meron din sa building, i-allocate nyo yan. Pag minimal value yung building, anong gagawin? Lahat na lang sa land. Okay. So, CDH purchased land and building at a total cost of 10 million. May fair value siyang 13 at saka 7. So, we have here 13 over 20 and 7 over 20. So, we allocate 10 million times 13 over 20. We have 6.5 million for the land. And then 3.5 million to the building. If the building has a minimal value, everything to the land, 10 million pesos. Alam na natin yan. CDH purchased a land and building at a total cost of 10 million and broker's fee of 50,000 was also incurred. This broker fee is a directly attributable cost allocated to land and building. Therefore, you also allocate it. So what do? We have 13 over 20 and 7 over 20. But what is the total allocable cost now? It is 10,050,000. So 10,050,000 multiplied by 13 over 20. So we have here 6,825,000 for the land. And for the building, we have 3,225,000. Okay? So this is for the building. So pansinin nyo dito purchase cost and the directly attributable cost that can be allocated to both land and building, pinagsama natin. Ganun dapat yung treatment ninyo. Pag hindi siya allocable to both, edi allocate nyo lang doon sa para sa property na yon. Pag the building has a minimal value, anong sagot natin dito? Lahat land, 10,050,000. Building, 0. Okay? Now, this is new interpretation, but actually, even without this interpretation, halata naman na dapat yung treatment natin. But still, we need to understand this. So this interpretation was given last 2012 whenever we have a problem regarding land and building, and the building will be subsequently demolished. But take note, the main issue here should have been land and building was purchased, and then you will demolish the building. Building will be demolished. The question here is, how will we, what is the treatment on the cost of the old building? Okay, what is the treatment of the cost of the old building? So the main issue here again, what is the treatment on the cost of the old building? So again, land and building, binili natin. Tapos yung building na nandun sa land na yon, ide-demolish natin. Ano daw yung treatment natin dun sa old building? Now, you take note that that old building must be demolished to make way for the new building. So you acquired a building in the current period to make way for the new building. What is the treatment of the old building? the old building will be treated as a loss. Sir, bakit treated as a loss? Eh, di ba necessary naman yon to create the new building? Actually, hindi. Kasi di ba, you have here land and building. So yung building dito, yan yung old building. Tinanggal mo yung old building to create the new building. Ang tanong daw kasi dito, paano yung carrying amount na allocated sa old building? Isasama ba yan sa new building? Hindi. Bakit? Kasi yung old building na yan, yung cost necessary for the new building is the demolition cost. Kasi yan yung cost. Eh yung carrying amount ba, is that a cost? No, that is not a cost. That is only an allocated amount to your old building. It is not a cost necessary for your new building. Okay? So whether or not there is your old building, you will still not make use it for your new building. So kumbaga, yung what do we call this one? The economic benefits on the old building will not transfer to the new building. That's why the reason here on the treatment of your carrying amount of your old building as a written off to your loss is because that economic benefits will never transfer to your new building. It will still a new building, it will still be an old building, whether or not you remove that. So kumbaga, wala talagang epekto yung old building na cost dun sa new building. Ano lang yung epekto ng old building as to the new building? The demolition cost. But the carrying amount, wala siyang epekto. So ang treatment talaga dapat dito is loss, even if wala pa tong PIC Q&A na to. So this is only an interpretation. This is the first time maybe that we have seen an interpretation that we really discuss. In all of our topics, we never discuss an interpretation. This was a problem kasi because they thought that the carrying amount of the old building should be included on the cost of the new building. But the answer is no, because the economic benefits on your old building will never transfer to your new building because they are different assets. Since you will remove now your old building, in short, your economic benefits on that old building will already cease. Whatever is the amount remaining must be treated as a loss. Next, what if you acquired the building in the previous period? Ito medyo weird lang to. Ito kasi bumili ka ngayon ng land and building tapos tanggalin mo yung building. Ito, bumili ka pa dati ng land and building tapos ngayon mo lang tatanggalin yung building. So kumbaga 1990, bumili ka. Tapos naisipan mo lang siyang tanggalin noong 2010. Anong gagawin mo daw dun sa cost of the old building? Anong gagawin mo dun sa cost of the old building? Eh the same pa rin yung treatment kasi kung wala naman talaga siyang direct effect dun sa new building, walang transfer of economic benefit, edi is still part of your profit or loss. You will treat it as a loss. So ang bottom line dyan, whatever is the treatment on the old building, whether there's a new building or not, the cost of the old building, since the economic benefit on that old building will already cease, you will treat it as a loss. Ayan ha. Wala tayong problema dyan ha. Whether or not you purchase it in the current period or you purchase it in the previous period, since the economic benefit will not transfer to the new building, you treat the carrying amount of that old building as a loss. You will not include it as part of your cost of the new building. Sir, what will be included on the cost of your new building? Only the demolition cost, net of proceeds. Nasundan? I hope nasundan natin yan. Medyo weird talaga tong PIC na to. Dapat nga kahit wala na tong PIC, alam natin na iti-treat natin yung loss na yan kasi wala namang transfer of economic benefits. But anyway, mas okay na merong Q&A para at least klaro tayong lahat on how to account for the cost of the old building. Ano yung uling scenario dito? There's an old building. You remove the old building to create a new building. Whatever cost of old building, what is the treatment? Loss. PIC Q&A number 2012-02. How about the treatment of your insurance? Sasabi ko to kanina, kailangan for the construction yan para ilagay siya sa cost of the building. If not, it is to be treated as an expense or asset. Sir, bakit expense? Kasi nga pwede nating i-record yan as insurance expense. Pwede rin natin siyang i-record as a prepaid insurance. Pero tignan mo dapat yung purpose ng insurance mo. Kailangan it is for your construction and within the construction period. Take note, if during the construction there are claims for damages and there is no insurance on construction, the claim is treated as an expense. The claim is treated as an expense. It will not be included as part of your cost of the building. So, ano bang ibig sabihin nito? For example, ano ba? Alam mo sa nangyari sa Skyway, there was an accident, may natanggal ata na something, tapos may namatay. So, may cause of the accident doon, di ba? Yung cause of accident, it is not included on your cost of the building. Why? Because it is not necessary for the present location and condition of the asset. Kasi hindi mo naman iisipin na laging may accident para lang makagawa ka ng building, di ba? At hindi naman necessary na magkaroon ng accident para lang matapos yung building. Therefore, it will always be treated as an expense. Ang gusto ko lang sabihin dito is in case pagka hindi mo siya pwedeng i-claim sa insurance, i-treat mo agad siya as an expense. So for example, binayaran mo yung aksidente muna. Binayaran mo yung aksidente. Tapos meron kang insurance. So meron kang claim against insurer. Claim against insurer. This is a receivable credit cash. Pero pag wala ka namang claim sa insurer mo, edi meron kang expense. So expense, cash. Yun yung ibig kong sabihin. But never ever treat the damages or claim for damages as part of your cost of the building because it is not necessary for the present location and condition of the building. Okay, we will forego that. We go now to your land and building as an investment. This is under PAS 40, investment property. So what is an investment property under PAS 40? It is a land or a building or part of a building or both held by the owner or by the lessee under a finance lease to earn rentals or for capital appreciation or both. So who controls it? Who controls it? The owner or the lessee in a finance lease. So we must first define who is a lessee. A lessee is a tenant. A lessee is a tenant. Siya yung umuupa. Yung lessor, siya yung nagpapaupa. Nagpapaupa. Ano ba yan? Susulat ko pa yung nagpapaupa. So a lessor is yung nagpapaupa. Now, what type of property? You have your land, building, or part of the building, or land and building. So, if you are the owner and you have either land, or you have building, or you have land and building, and your purpose is to earn rentals, then it is part of your PAS 40. It is part of your PAS 40. But if you are the owner and you have land, building, or part of the building, or land and building for capital appreciation, it's still part of your PAS 40. So what is the difference between here and here? A finance lease, by the way, is rent. Your rent under our standard is composed of two. We have your finance lease and we have your operating lease. Your finance lease, what we have here is a lease that after the end or after the lease term, there is a transfer of ownership. While in operating lease, there is no transfer of ownership. So in case, guys, you are the owner, you have a land, you have a building, or a part of the building, or a land in the building, to earn rentals, this earn rentals must be an operating lease. An operating lease. What about here? You are a lessee in a finance lease. So you are only a tenant, but in a finance lease. So you are leasing either land, building, or part of the building, or land and a building. Take note here, guys, that since you are under the finance lease, there will be a transfer of ownership. So baka at the end, sa'yo yung ownership. Tapos, anong purpose mo lang? Dalawa. To earn rentals or for capital appreciation. Take note, this only applies to land and building. Ang kailangan nyo lang tandaan dito, kailangan land or building siya to earn rentals and for capital appreciation. But take note, yung earn rentals na to dapat operating lease. Okay, so what, example, I own a building and I lease a part of the building to A. I lease a part of the building to A under a finance lease. So I am the owner of a building. I lease a part of the building to A. So let's say fourth floor, nilease ko kay A under a finance lease. Question, control owner? Yes. Type of property? Building. Purpose, earn rentals. Question, is the earning rentals operating or finance? Since it is finance lease, then you should not include it as investment property. Kailangan pasok siya dito sa tatlo. Paano naman if I'm a lessee in a finance lease and I have a land and I lease a portion of the land? So parang nag-sublease ako, then pwede yon as long as it is an operating lease. Okay? So examples of investment property, land held for long-term capital appreciation, land held for undecided future use. So the undecided future use here is still considered as a capital appreciation. Why? Because land normally laging nag-appreciate lang yung value niya. Never siyang nagde-depreciate. So habang hindi ka pa nakakapag-decide kung anong gamit ng land mo, nag-appreciate na yung value niya. So ang treatment ng standard, it is still an investment property. Take note here, we have building, lease out under operating lease. Tanging yung lease mo dapat is operating lease. If you are the owner, if you will held it for rental to others, operating lease lang. Pag ito naging finance lease, ay hindi na yan investment property. Vacant building held or leased out under operating lease. Ayan property under construction as investment property. Take note guys, ayan yung to earn rentals, kailangan operating lease yan. Once nag-finance lease, hindi yan investment property. Hindi yan investment property. So what if we have an investment property partial own use? Partial own use. What is this? So we have here an investment property or a property that can be classified as investment property. However, you will use a certain portion of it. So the owner uses a certain part of the property. So if ever the portion leased out separately, you account separately. But if the portions cannot be sold or leased out separately, you will look at the significant component. Okay, so if the portions can be sold or leased out separately, account it separately. So yung own use at saka yung for rentals or capital appreciation. Pag own use yan, ilagay sa PPE under PAS 16. Pag rentals or capital appreciation, ilagay yan sa PAS 40 if it can be separated. So for example, you have here a building. Okay, so floor 1, floor 2, floor 3, floor 4, floor 5. And then let's say unit 501, unit 502, 503. So alam mo talaga yung mga units na yan. And you can list out separately 503. Since you can list out separately 503, yung other portions, PAS 16. Yung you can list out separately, PAS 40. Okay. What if you cannot list out separately? Test of significance. Test of significance. If the significant percentage is for own use, if the significant percentage is own use, then we place it as property, plant, and equipment. But if the significant percentage is for leasing out to others or for rentals or capital appreciation, PAS 40. We make use this as an example. Assuming you cannot list it out separately, tapos ito lang yung portion na for earning rentals. Yan lang yung for earning rentals. You cannot list it out separately. Tapos yan lang yung portion na earning rentals. So out of the whole building, isa lang yung mag-earn ng rentals. Tama? So what is the significant portion? Is it the earning of rentals or the use of the owner? It is the use of the owner. Therefore, you will include it as PPE. Guys, ito wala mismo sa mga problems. Normally, it is for theoretical purposes only. It is used for theoretical purposes. So if ever there is partial own use, if you can separate the properties, then separate it. If you cannot separate the properties, test of significant. So alang percentage yung mas malaki? Is it the own use or is it the capital appreciation or rental? If own use, PPE. If rental or capital appreciation, then you use PAS 40. Ancillary services. So normally, if that is rent, may dagdag pang services yan. So for example, nagpaparenta ka tapos ikaw pa yung cleaning dun sa pinaparenta mo. So yun yung service na excess. So what we mean here is if ever the enterprise will include additional services aside from the rental. So nagpaparenta ka, may additional services pa doon sa kontrata na yon. So yung example nga natin, merong renta tapos tayo pa yung maglilinis. So you test whether the ancillary services is significant or insignificant. If the ancillary services is insignificant, then investment property. If not, property, plant, and equipment. Meaning, if the ancillary services is more significant rather than the investment property, then PPE. Why? Kasi tandaan na, saka lang tayo magpa-pass 40 pag na-meet mo yung dalawa. Held for rental to others or capital appreciation. Eh since napaka-insignificant na ng rental to others or capital appreciation, in short, PPE na. Anong significant dito? Yung significant is yung services. So mas malaki yung value ng services kesa yung rent mo. Therefore, PPE. Kung mas malaki yung value ng rent mo or for capital appreciation, edi investment property. Take note, ano yung tinitignan natin na significant dito? Yung significance ng services. So if the services is significant, PPE. If it's significant, investment property. Taken it in another context, if ever your rent or capital appreciation is significant, then we will use investment property. But if your rent or capital appreciation is insignificant, pag rent or capital appreciation naman yung insignificant, PPE. So kung paliktarin naman natin. Kung services yung titingnan, if services is significant, PPE. If rent or capital appreciation is significant, PPE. Ganun yun. Okay? Kasi kailangan ma-meet natin yung purpose. Significance niya talaga kailangan rental to others or capital appreciation. What is the measurement of your investment property? Cost plus transaction cost. Subsequent measurement is cost model and fair value model. For your cost model, i-discuss natin yan mamaya. Yan yung may accumulated depreciation less accumulated impairment. On your fair value model, you just compare the carrying amount to your fair value. Any gains or losses here will be presented under profit or loss. Madali lang to. Ito, i-discuss natin mamaya. Fair value model again, we just compare the carrying amount to your fair value. The gains or losses will be presented in profit or loss. Okay, so we have here transfers to and from investment property. So either from investment property to other items or from other items to investment property. So we have here from investment property to owner-occupied property or inventories. So ang pwede lang kasi nating paglalagyan is from past 40 to past 2 or past 16. Or from past 2, past 16 to past 40. Yan yung mga pwede. From past 40 to past 2, from past 2 to past 40. Mga ganon. So what is the treatment if it is from investment property? If it's from investment property, ito yung mga from investment property, to either owner-occupied property or inventories, you will treat it at the fair value at the change of the use. So whatever is the fair value at the change of the use, yun yung ating investment property to inventories. So for example, we have here investment property at 500,000. And then you will reclassify it under past 2. Let's say at the time of classification, the fair value is 510,000. So how do we measure now the transfer from investment property to past 2? We will measure it at fair value, so 510. Sir, saan ilalagay yung difference? Di sa profit or loss. So if that is from past 40 to past 2 or past 16 at fair value, assuming yung pinanggalingan ng past 40 ay fair value. But what if it is under cost model? So if that investment property is under cost model, so dito na tayo guys. Ito yung una nating diniscuss. Andito na tayo. Investment property under cost model naman. Papuntang past 2 to past 16. Ang sabi dito, kailangan at carrying amount pa rin. So dito, may gain or loss due to change in fair value. Dito, no gain or loss. So for example, investment property to past 2. Tapos, ang gamit natin ay fair value model. What is the value of your past 2 now? 510,000. The current fair value under number 1. Now, under number 2, we have here investment property under cost model to inventory. So, ang gamit natin sa investment property is cost model. Ililipat natin sa inventory. What is the value now? At the carrying amount, which is still 500,000. Dito, dun sa una at fair value. Pangalawa at cost. How about if that is investment property under construction or development? We will account it at fair value. So if ever it is under development, ililipat natin sa completed investment property at fair value. Paano naman kung galing dito sa past 2 or past 16 papunta sa past 40? Papunta sa past 40. We will measure it at fair value. So ito yun, number 4. We will measure it at fair value. Any difference will be included as part of your gain or loss, either as revaluation or as a gain or loss under profit or loss. Kailan siya as revaluation? If ever it is from past 16 to past 40. Okay? Tapos ito, past 2 to past 40. Okay. So dun sa past 16 to past 40, kailangan yung past 40 niya at fair value. Since you will account it at fair value, revaluation. Past 2, past 40, since you will account it at fair value, profit or loss. Sir, bakit yung sa past 16 sa revaluation? Because if we will value our asset now at fair value, we are now using revaluation model. Kaya revaluation pa rin yung treatment. Sa past 2 kasi, if ever we will value it at fair value, you will still account it under profit or loss. Remember, if there is an increase or decrease on your lower of cost and net realizable value, it will be still included under profit or loss. So what is the general rule here? Ano ba yan? Nabubulol ako. So what is the general rule here? So if ever that is from past 40 to either past 2 or past 16, if it is fair value to this, you account it at fair value. Gain or loss presented in profit or loss. But if it's under cost model, you will account it at cost. But if that is under past 2 or past 16, and it will go to past 40, under fair value model only, either the two, you will account it at fair value. But the gains or losses are different. If it is from past 16, it is known as revaluation. Past 2, placed as gain or loss in profit or loss. Okay? So from past 40 to past 2 or past 16, from past 2 or past 16 to past 40. Sir, bakit walang from past 40 to PFRS 5? Or from PFRS 5 to past 40. Wala pa yan guys kasi past 40 is an old standard. Past 40 is an old standard. PFRS 5 is a new standard. So hindi niya pa nasakop yung PFRS 5. Kaya wala tayong transfers from past 40 to PFRS 5 or PFRS 5 from PFRS 5 to past 40. So ang meron lang tayo, transfers from past 2, past 16, and past 40. Walang PFRS 5. O, ang rule na lang natin, lahat fair value model except if nanggaling yan sa cost. Okay? Ang nag-iisa lang naman na iba dito, ito yung past 40 na cost model, pagka yan lang talaga yung at cost. Lahat na at fair value. Lahat na at fair value. Tingnan lang yung treatment ng past 16 as to your gain or loss. It is treated as revaluation, not a gain or loss in profit or loss. Cost of machinery. For your cost of machinery, we have the following items. Our mnemonics here is if Pit was fund. Okay? We continue our discussion here in your cost of machinery after your 5-minute break. So we continue with your cost of machinery. Under your cost of machinery, we have here your mnemonic if Pit was fund. So the first is your insurance while in transit. So here is an insurance cost of your machinery while the machinery is in transit. This is different with the insurance that we have discussed a while back. That insurance was procured for the purpose of construction, while here it is procured for the purpose of the safety of the machinery while it is in transit. So take note, you must look at the insurance and it must be attributable to the transit of machinery from the buyer to the from the seller to the buyer. Next, you have your freight cost. You already know this one. Freight cost must be included. Purchase price. Next, we have your installation costs, including site preparation and assembly costs. Normally, what is placed in your problems is your site preparation costs. So if ever you hear or see site preparation costs, you include it. Also, installation costs. In case normally machinery is needed, machineries needs to be installed prior use. Hindi siya yung tipong pagka binili mo yung machine, pagkadating sa'yo, pwede na siya. Kailangan talaga may installation pa siya. So the installation cost should be included. Cost of testing and trial runs should also be included to know if the machine is really working or not. Okay, why is this necessary for the testing and trial run? Again, to test whether the machinery is working or not. So you already received the machinery. Now the problem is, does it really work or not? So to know whether it is really working or not, you need to test it and make a trial run. And the cost of your testing and trial run should be included as cost of your machinery. Next, you have your water device to keep machine cool. Why? Because machineries normally are prone to overheat. And they place a water cooling system for that machinery, and that water cooling system should be included as cost of your machinery. Next, we have your adjustments to machinery for operational efficiency and to increase capacity. Take note, it must increase its capacity and its efficiency. So any adjustment made on that machinery, so long as it is for the efficiency and for the increase in the capacity of the machinery, we include it. Also, safety rail and platform surrounding your machine. Consultant fee should also be included. Unloading charges, actually unloading charges should be included here. Kaso hiniwalay ko lang siya para meron tayong U. Anyway, it is included in your freight. Next, you have your non-refundable sales tax. Alam na natin to. Only non-refundable sales tax should be included. If that is refundable, what is the treatment of that refundable tax? You should exclude. Next, you have your dismantling and removing and restoring costs. Ingat dito How do we get for this dismantling and removing and restoring costs? The present value. Because dismantling and removing and restoring cost is a future cost. Since it is a future cost, you must get the present value. What's new here in your cost of machinery? Actually, this one, cost of testing, water device, adjustments, safety rail and platform. All other else are almost the same. Alam mong attributable siya. Ang bago lang talaga dito, yung testing and trial run. Bakit uli? Kasi nga, kailangan natin i-test if that particular machine is really working effectively. If not, then pwede nating i-return. Water device, these are cooling systems that is normal really in your machines. Safety rail and platform. Hindi ko alam kung nakakita na ngayon ng manufacturing company, tapos meron talaga silang safety rails, meron silang mga platforms para safe yung mga laborers nila while they are producing their goods. Also, adjustments, yun yung mga bago dito. All other else, common naman yan. Alam mong dadagdag yan. Tapos, ang hindi common lang, itong mga items na to. Why I am why am I placing emphasis on items that are not common? Because guys, I know you have already an idea that this must be included, this must be included. But these items na bago kasi sa atin, yun yung mga new na hindi natin alam na talaga dapat i-include. So that's why we place an emphasis on these items that are new and that is included. Okay? So these are the items on your cost of machinery. Next, we talk about your cost subsequent to acquisition. We're still in your part of your measurement. We're still on your part of your measurement. So we're done with your purchase price. We're done with your directly attributable cost. And we're done with your restoration cost. So we have now your subsequent measurement. So in your subsequent measurement, aside from your cost model and your revaluation model, we also look into your subsequent expenses pertaining to machinery, to land, to building, or subsequent costs pertaining to property, plant, and equipment as a whole. So what is our treatment on this subsequent cost? Your subsequent costs can either be part of your property, plant, or equipment or part of your expense. So dalawa lang yung treatment natin, either PPE or part of your expense. So kailan natin siya ilalagay as PPE? We will include it as part of your PPE if you can measure reliably and it is probable. So if probable and measurable, the economic benefits relating to that subsequent cost, we include it as part of your PPE. If not, it is expense. When can we say that there is a reliability as to your future economic benefits measurement, and when can we say that it is really a probable economic benefit? There are three items that we look into. There is really an evidence on the increase on your economic benefit if there is an increase in useful life. So ibig sabihin, tumaas yung useful life ng ating property, or yung quantity tumaas as to efficiency, yung quality tumaas din as to efficiency. So titignan natin tong items na to. Pag any of the three is present, there is a future economic benefit. Again, we go back to your rule. So we are still in your measurement of your property, plant, and equipment. But we are now talking about your subsequent costs. So what is a subsequent cost? These are costs after the acquisition. These are costs after the acquisition. So what is the treatment of your subsequent costs? If it is probable and measurable, you place it as part of your PPE. If not, you place it as part of your expense. When can we say it is probable and measurable? Here, if ever there is an increase in your useful life, if ever there is an increase in your quantity of product produced, if there is an increase on your quality of product produced. And what are your costs subsequent to acquisition? We have four items. We call it additions, repairs, rearrangement, and replacement. And we will look one by one on how we will treat these subsequent expenditures. We start with the concept of your revenue and capital expenditure. Your subsequent expenditure can be grouped as either revenue or capital expenditure. If that is only a revenue expenditure, it means it does not probable economic benefit. It does not have probable economic benefit. What is the treatment? You will expense it. If that is a capital expenditure, it means it has a probable economic benefit, either in the increase of your useful life or in the quality or in the quantity. Then we will capitalize it as part of your property under PAS 16. Again, your subsequent costs, you have these two concepts of expenditure. This cost can either be a revenue expenditure or a capital expenditure. We call it as a revenue expenditure if ever it does not have probable economic benefit. Therefore, we expense it. But if there is a probable economic benefit, either through the increase of your useful life, quality of the product produced, or the quantity of the products produced, then we capitalize it as part of your property, plant, and equipment under PAS 16. We go now to our first subsequent costs. We have here your additions. What are additions? Additions are extensions, enlargements, or expansions made to an existing asset. So for example, you have a building and then you create a new building, parang extension nung isang floor nung isang building. Parang sa UC, alam niyo yung anong floor na ba natin? Sa tagal kung wala sa UC, hindi ko na alam yung floor natin. Doon sa main building, di ba parang meron tayong veranda doon. So assuming wala pa yung veranda, tapos dinagdagan natin ng veranda, ano yung treatment natin ng cost doon sa veranda? The treatment is, it will be part of the cost of the asset. Why? Because there will be a future economic benefit on that particular veranda. There is an expansion, extension, or enlargement. So additions should be capitalized. How about repairs? For your repairs, these are different expenditures to maintain the operation or current condition of the asset. You look at your repairs. Is that a recurring repair or not? Normally, a recurring repair is also known as ordinary repair. That ordinary repair is to be treated as an expense. Why? It is only recurring. It does not really add value. It does not extend the life of the asset. But if that is major, normally it is a large expenditure, then you capitalize it. So guys, problems will always tell you whether that repair is a major repair or ordinary repair. So ang treatment natin, major repair, capitalize. Ordinary repair, expense. Okay, so we're done with two subsequent expenditures. Additions, treatment, capitalize. Major repair, capitalize. Ordinary repair, expense. Next, we have your rearrangement and reinstallations. So what is this rearrangement and reinstallation? So let's say we have here a machinery, and then you will rearrange the setup of your machinery. For example, your production is machinery 1 to machinery 2 to machinery 3 to machinery 4. So you have 4 machineries, yun yung arrangement ng production mo. Kaso ni-rearrange mo siya. So let's say machinery 1 muna, papuntang 4, tapos 3 to 2. Dahil dun sa rearrangement mo, titignan mo if ever there is a measurable benefit. If you cannot make any measurable benefit, so assuming, di ba, ito, machinery 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Yan yung normal na setup mo. Ni-rearrange mo siya, 1 muna, tas machine 4, tas machine 3, tas machine 2. Now, with this rearrangement, you look if there is a benefit. What is the benefit that we look in your rearrangement? If there is an increase as to the quality and quantity of your production. Kasi, let's say, ni-rearrange mo siya, tumaas yung production mo. There is a measurable benefit. If there is a measurable benefit, then capitalize. If not, expense. Take note, if there is a greater efficiency in production or reduce the cost, there is a measurable benefit. Then we capitalize it. If not, we expend it. We expense it. Guys, rearrangement and reinstallations is only applicable to machinery. It is not applicable to land. It cannot be applicable to building also, because you cannot just uproot a building and place it in another area. Cannot be. Only for machines. We have now a replacement or improvement. When can we say it is a replacement? It is a replacement if ever we have a major component that is change. Okay? Major component that is only change. Okay? So kumbaga, component 1 niya, tapos pinalitan mo lang uli siya ng component 1, edi replacement lang yon. Pero kung pinalitan mo siya ng different type of component, with a superior performance, we call that improvement or betterment. So kumbaga, parang X mo lang yan. Yung X mo, kung pinalitan mo siya ng same lang doon ng X mo, replacement lang yan. Pero kung pinalitan mo siya ng mas magandang current jowa mo, improvement yan. So we must always strive for improvement or betterment. So you change it, you change your jowa with superior capabilities. Anyway, just a segue. If ever a replacement, take note, there is no change in the capability of that particular item. But if there is a change in the capability of another item, then we say it is an improvement. So, sa machine, tapos may part siya, let's say C1, part C1. Yung part C1, same lang din kung ano yung pinalit mo doon. That is replacement. Pag pinalitan mo ng mas superior siya, so for example, sa laptop mo, part C1, yung C1 ay yung chip niya. Tapos pinalitan mo ng mas mataas na chip. So yung chip na yon superior siya, we call that betterment. But replacement or betterment is treated as part of your cost of the asset. Sir, why is it part of your cost of the asset? Because without that particular item, your asset cannot work. Take note, it is a major component of the asset kasi. So whether or not it is a replacement or an improvement, you treat it as a part of your cost of the asset, because without that part, the asset won't work. It is a component or a major component of the asset. Kailan lang natin masasabing replacement? Pag same, pag improvement naman, superior yung capability. Okay, so we're done with your subsequent expenditures. We go now to your other items of PPE. We have your patterns and dies. If it's for regular operations, it is treated as part of your PPE kasi nga pasok siya dun sa definition. So it is used for the operations or for the production or supply of services, then PPE. But if it is for special products, that pattern is expense and it will be included as cost of the product. Okay? So if it's normal operation, used for the operation of production or supply, PPE. If it is for a special product, binili mo lang talaga siya for a special product, then you expense it. It will be part of your cost of the product. Containers, what are these containers? So normally, nakikita nyo to doon sa mga bottling stations. These containers, if ever it is returnable, it is part of your property, plant, and equipment. But if that container is not returnable, expense. So for example, you are in the bottling business, yung mga water refilling station. Tapos yung containers, binabalik talaga sa'yo, edi PPE mo yung mga yon. Okay? Place it as part of your PPE. But if it's not returnable, place it as part of your expense. Okay? So that's the end of our land, building, and machinery. We go now to your subsequent measurement. So we're done with your initial measurement. We go now with your subsequent measurement. What are the items that we discussed on your initial measurement? We particularly discussed your purchase price, on your modes of acquisition. We also discussed your directly attributable costs, especially with your land, building, and machinery. We discussed your restoration costs. And further, we also discussed your subsequent expenditures. We go now to your subsequent measurement of your property, plant, and equipment. So what is the subsequent measurement of your property, plant, and equipment? Under your subsequent measurement of property, plant, and equipment, we have two. It's either cost model or revaluation model. So what is the difference between your cost model and revaluation model? That is the measurement of your property, plant, and equipment as to its value. The cost model will always measure the property at cost, while your revaluation model will measure it at fair value. So whatever is the cost, yung cost natin, ito yung tatlo na na-discuss natin. Yung 3 items, yun yung cost. Ibabawas mo lang yung depreciation, ibabawas mo yung impairment loss. Pero dito sa revaluation, it will always be measured at fair value. It will always be measured at fair value, less accumulated depreciation, less impairment loss. So for this particular session or topic or slide, we are to discuss your depreciation methods, because they are common both for cost and for revaluation. Also, your impairment under PAS 36. And then your revaluation model, which is the fair value measurement of your property, plant, and equipment. So let's start now. So what is depreciation? Depreciation is the systematic allocation of the depreciable amount of an asset over its useful life. Take note of the depreciable amount. Why? Because depreciable amount differs accordingly to the method. Okay? Depreciable amount differs accordingly to the method. Some depreciable amount binabawas yung salvage value. Some does not deduct salvage value. So ingat sa depreciable amount. So why is it systematic? Because it is based on a formula or plan depending on your method. Next, it is rational because it fits with reality depending again on your method. So normally it fits with reality, especially for machinery if ever you use your units of production method. And allocation, it is not a process of valuation. Ingat kayo dito Ito yung normal na mali ng mga estudyante. They think that depreciation is a process of valuation. But no, it is a method of allocation. The process of valuation is your initial measurement. So it's either cost or your fair value. But here, we allocate now whatever is the value. Whatever is the value, we allocate over the useful life. That's why it is a method of allocation, not a method of valuation. So what do we call the allocation of your costs for your long-lived assets? For your fixed assets, particularly your PAS 16, we call it your depreciation expense. For intangibles, we call it amortization expense. For mineral resources, we call it your depletion expense. This is for your wasting assets. So fixed asset and wasting asset is part of our topic, but intangibles is for your IA2. So we have here your concept of physical depreciation. So when we say physical depreciation, it is based on your assets wear and tear. So based talaga dun sa physical niya, pagka parang nakikita mong paluma na yung asset, so physical depreciation yan. So it may be caused by passage of time, action of elements, wear and tear, accidents, and diseases. This is the concept of your physical depreciation. How about the concept of your functional depreciation? So your functional depreciation depends on the function of the asset. Depends on the function of the asset. If the asset is not already working based on its function, not based on its function already, then it is obsolete or inadequate. So yung physical based on wear and tear, functional based on its function. So pag hindi na talaga natin nagagamit siya based on our function, so we depreciate it already. So functional depreciation may arise if ever there is no more future demand on the product, or there is a new asset which is available, which makes now your old asset obsolete. Which makes now your old asset obsolete. So physical and functional depreciation. Two concepts of depreciation. Physical, based on wear and tear. Functional, based on the function of the asset. If the asset does not function already based on what it is used to be, then you can use your functional depreciation. So what is the depreciation process? The first process on your depreciation is to compute for your depreciable base. So what is your depreciable base? Is it your cost of the asset less the salvage value? Is it only the cost? Is it the fair value? Or is it the fair value less salvage value? So you need to look at the depreciable base. So hindi lang ibig sabihin na ang depreciable base ay cost less salvage value. Titignan pa natin talaga kung cost lang ba or kung fair value lang ba. Next, we need to determine the useful life of the asset and the method of cost apportionment. So when we say method of cost apportionment, this is your depreciation method. This is your depreciation method. So your depreciation process, we start with your depreciable base, and of course, we look at your depreciation method. Sometimes we forego this useful life. Sometimes we forego your useful life because not all depreciation method is dependent on the useful life of the asset. So what is the useful life of the asset? The useful life of the asset is dependent on your physical depreciation or your functional depreciation. So your asset retires for two reasons: physical factors or economic factors such as your functional depreciation. That's why meron kayong nakikitang retirement method, ganun. That is because of your functional depreciation. That is because of your functional depreciation. So normally, ang alam nating depreciation, cost divided by useful life. Pero meron din tayong functional or economic depreciation. Kaya meron tayong tinatawag na retirement method. Okay. So depreciation method, we have this different depreciation method. First is your uniform depreciation method. Pag uniform depreciation method, we have a uniform rate. You have a uniform rate. So equal yung rate na yan. For activity, you base it on your activity. So your activity can either be working hours or output. We have also your accelerated. We have your sum of the year's digits and declining balance. Why is it called accelerated? Because the value of your depreciation expense is decreasing. For your uniform, ganyan lang yan. Uniform, equal kasi siya. For activity, depende yan. Depende sa activity. But for accelerated, ang graph mo pababa because the value of your depreciation expense is high during the earlier years and low during the latter years. Why is it that we use your accelerated? Uniform kasi, although madali ang uniform kasi nga equal siya, pero sabi nila, mas okay daw yung accelerated because it shows how you use your property, plant, and equipment. Why? Totoo naman na talagang mas higher yung capacity or use ng property at its earlier years rather than its latter years. So kumbaga, mas ginagamit mo naman talaga yung PPE sa una. So that's why your depreciation is high during the earlier years. Bababa during the latter years. Kaya siya tinawag na accelerated. Uniform, equal lang siya. So yung graph niya, straight line lang. Ganyan. Pag activity, medyo weird siya. Ganyan. Kasi hindi mo alam kung ano yung activity. Okay? So what is the graph of uniform? Straight lang. Activity, medyo wavy. For your accelerated, downwards. Downwards slope. Okay? So what are the uniform depreciation method, straight line, composite, or group? What are the activity depreciation method, working hours and output? What are the accelerated depreciation methods, sum of the year's digits, and declining balance? We start with your straight line method. So on your straight line method, you just get for your cost less residual value over the useful life multiplied by period. O, eto na naman. Mag-ingat sa period because what you get here is the annual depreciation. So you must multiply it to your period if ever you are getting for the depreciation expense for a particular period only. So ingat sa period ingat sa period. So kung 6 months lang yan, edi times 6/12. Wala naman sigurong problema dito sa straight line method. Okay? We go now to your composite or group method. So for your composite or group method, we will get for the straight line depreciation for group of assets. We get for the straight line depreciation for your group of assets. So what is the depreciable base? That is cost less residual value. What is the depreciation charge? That is your cost multiplied by your composite rate. So how do we compute for your composite rate? That is your annual depreciation expense divided by total cost. And your composite life is your depreciable cost divided by your total annual depreciation. So why is it important for us to determine the composite life? Because kailangan you will only provide for your depreciation expense over the composite life. So bakit may composite or group depreciation? Because you have a group of assets. We have a group of assets. So if you don't want to depreciate per asset, then you can depreciate per group. Okay, so composite or group method presented below is information related to CDH company. So composite rate of depreciation and composite life. So first, we compute for your composite rate of depreciation. Andito ba siya? Ay, wala. So to compute for your composite rate of depreciation, we follow our formula. Composite rate is equal to your total annual depreciation divided by your total cost. Okay, so get first your annual depreciation. So 50 less 5, 30 less 4, 20 less 2, divided by 10, divided by 8, and divided by 8. So we have here 50,000 less 5, divided by 10 is 45. 30,000 less 4,000 divided by 8, 3,250. And then we have 20,000 less 2,000 divided by 8, we have 2,250. So our total annual depreciation, 2,250 plus 3,250 plus 45 will give us 10,000 pesos. Will give us 10,000 pesos. So what is our next step? Our next step is to compute for your composite rate of depreciation. To compute for your composite rate of depreciation, what we need to get is your annual depreciation over the cost of the asset. So what is our composite rate of depreciation, guys? Kindly please compute. What is our composite rate? Hello? Our composite rate is equal to 10%, di ba? Nakuha nyo ba yun? 10%? 10,000 over our total cost of 100,000. Ayan. So what is the composite life? Our composite life is the depreciable cost over your total annual depreciation. So what is our depreciable cost? 100,000 less 11,000. So our depreciable cost is 89,000. 89,000 divided by 10,000 annual depreciation. We have here 8.9 years. We also have your retirement. So for your retirement, we just debit cash, we debit accumulated depreciation, we credit PPE for your retirement of your one-off assets under your composite or group method. There is no gain or loss to be recognized during the retirement of your composite or group method. Also, for your depreciation charge after retirement, we deduct the total cost to your PPE retired multiplied by your composite rate. Okay. So we go now to your replacement. So under your replacement, we just debit your PPE and we credit cash. So we have here your composite, di ba? Meron tayong composite asset or group asset. Dito naman ang mangyayari, dadagdagan pa natin ng additional asset. Dadagdagan natin ng additional asset. So ang tanong dito, how do we compute for your depreciation charge? Your depreciation charge will still be your total cost plus your replacement asset multiplied by your composite rate. So ang gagawin mo lang, idadagdag mo yung replacement asset mo. Tapos i-multiply mo na rin siya ng composite rate. So dito, after asset C was retired having been salvaged for 10,000, asset C was replaced by asset D. Asset D costs 40,000 and has a residual value of 4,000. What is the depreciation charge after the retirement of asset C? So what we do is we just get for the total cost and then we deduct the BPE retired and then we add the replacement. So ang total cost kasi natin ay 100,000. And then we deduct the retired asset which is asset C. So tanggalin natin yung 20,000 niya. Tapos idadagdag natin yung replacement niya which is asset D, 40,000. I-multiply natin dun sa composite rate natin na 10%. So ang value niyan, yun yung ating amount of depreciation. So 100 less 20 less 40 is 120 times 10%. So we have here 12,000. We go now to your activity method. So for your activity method, madali lang to. Kailangan mo lang kunin yung ating depreciable base, which is cost as residual value you get for your activity rate, and you multiply it to your activity. So we have here working hours and activity based on units. So for your working hours, you get for your depreciable base. So we have here an equipment which is worth 6,160 and a salvage value of 160. So we have here 6 million. And since working hours is your depreciable base, you get for your total working hours, which is 40,000. So what is your depreciation rate per working hour and your depreciation rate per unit? So how many units can we make? 600,000. So 6 million divided by 40,000, we have 150. And 6 million divided by 600,000, 6 million divided by 600,000, we have 10. You just multiply it to your actual hours and for your actual units. So the actual hours for 2018 is 550. Actual units is 14,550. So 150 times 550, we have 82,500. 10 times 14,550, we have 145,500. 145,500. Okay, we go now to your accelerated methods. So for your accelerated methods, again, we have your sum of the year's digits and your, what do we call this one? Your declining balance. So we start with your sum of the year's digits. For your sum of the year's digits, we really compute for your sum of the years. So itotal natin lahat ng sum of the years. But how do we compute for your sum of the years? That is your useful life multiplied by useful life plus 1 divided by 2. So for your sum of the year's digits, the numerator is the number of year and the denominator is the SYD. But take note, to compute for this one, we just get first for your depreciable base. So this is equal to your cost times residual value multiplied by your fraction, which is your year divided by your SYD multiplied by your period. Okay, so here we have a full year depreciation. The useful life is 5 years. So we have here 5 plus 1 divided by 2 multiplied by 5. Our SYD is 15. So for year 1, you get for the highest year muna. So ang first natin is 5 over 15 multiplied by your depreciable base. 650 less 50. So 5 over 15 times 600,000, we have 200,000 pesos. We have 200,000 pesos. Bakit? Di ba 5 years yan? So sum of the years, 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 equals 15. And yung numerator mo should be the highest year first. So 5 over 15. Then 4 over 15, 3 over 15, 2 over 15, and 1 over 15. How about a fractional year? If that is a fractional year, you just get for the depreciation for year 1 and year 2. So we have here March 1, 2019. So we have here 650,000. So for 2019, so we have here 650,000 less 50,000 multiplied by 5 over 15. How many months? March 1, 2019 to December 2019. So 10 over 12. How about on 2020? We have 650 less 50,000 multiplied by 5 over 15 times 2 over 12 yung natitira. Tapos kukuha ulit tayo ng 4 over 15 na 10 over 12. So 650 less 50,000, ganun naman for 2020. So notice, kung ilan yung natira doon sa unang fraction, yun na lang yung kukunin natin sa second year. So how much for 2020? 600,000 times 5 over 15 multiplied by 2 over 12 plus 600,000 times 4 over 15 times 10 over 12. So we have here 166,666.67. Okay, so fractional year, per fraction consists of 1 year. Therefore, whatever is left, you can still recognize it on the next year. Half-year depreciation. For half-year depreciation, you make it as a full year. So the half year, you multiply it to 2. So in 1 year, you have 2 fractions. Kanina kasi, pagka full year, it is 1 fraction. Since this is half year, 1 year consists of 2 fractions. Clear? So we have here 2.5 years. 2.5 years. So for year 2019, ang 2 fractions natin is 5 over 15 and 4 over 15 multiplied by 600,000 to get for 1 year. Clear? Kasi 1 fraction represents half year. So to get 1 year, edi 2 fractions. So ano ang gagawin natin pagka half year yan? Pag half year yan, you multiply it by 2. So 2.5 times 2, that's the useful life, over plus 1 divided by 2 multiplied by 2.5 times 2. So gagawin mong full year yan. Full year yan. Okay? Sir, paano naman pagka quarter yung buhay ng asset? So let's say 1.25. Gagawin mong whole year yan. Para maging whole number yan, anong imumultiply mo naman? Imumultiply mo siya sa 4. So 1.25 times 4, this will give us 5 naman. Okay. So how many fractions do we need to get for 1 depreciation? So our depreciation expense, since this is 0.25, you need 4 fractions. Okay? Ulitin natin. Pagka hindi full year ang ating life, pag hindi yan full year, kailangan nating gawing full year. So kung half year yan, 2.5 para maging full, i-multiply mo by 2. Pag quarter yan, let's say 1.25 para gawing whole year yan, i-multiply mo by 4. And since ang depreciation natin mas composed of one whole year, half year lang ang isa dito, to get for whole year, we have 5 over 15 and 4 over 15 for 1 year. Paano naman dito sa quarterly? Meron tayong 5 over 15, 4 over 15, 3 over 15, and 2 over 15 to make one whole year. Because one fraction here now represents 0.25. While here, one fraction represents 1/2 year. Okay? So if ever it is not full year, make it as a full year. Next, you have your declining balance method. For your declining balance method, take note, this is new. You just need to get for your carrying amount. You just need to get for your carrying amount. Unlike all, you need to get for your depreciable base. Here, you need to get for your carrying amount. So carrying amount times 3 times period. So for your depreciable base, take note the carrying amount for the last year. So previous year CA less residual value. Okay, so for 150% declining balance, to compute for your rate, 1 over useful life times 150%. For double declining balance, 1 over useful life times 200%. Your fixed percentage declining balance is not applicable already to you because you are to use your basic calculator. And for basic calculator, you cannot make use of a useful life, what do we call this? Square root? Hindi square root, useful life root. So paano kung ang useful life mo ay 10? Wala na, di ba? Hindi na kaya yan ng basic calculator. So ang pwede lang natin is 150% double declining and 200% double declining. Ano yung depreciable base natin? Carrying amount. So let's make use of this. So our declining balance is 150. So to compute for our rate, 37.5%. If you will use 200% declining, our rate is 50%. 1 over useful life multiplied by 200%. So for fixed percentage naman, ayan siya, 47.34. And other depreciation methods, we have your retirement method, replacement method, and inventory method. So for your retirement and replacement method, this is based on your functional depreciation. Based on your functional depreciation. So for retirement method, no depreciation expense is recognized until the asset is retired. So what is your depreciation expense? Cost less salvage proceeds. So CDH company has 150,000 of inventory of small tools. On July, CDH retired 10,000 tools and salvage 1,000. What is the depreciation? So the cost of 10,000 less 1,000, our depreciation is 9,000 pesos. Replacement method. So no depreciation expense is recognized until the asset is replaced. So the depreciation charge is still cost less salvage proceeds. So it's still the same. How about inventory method? So for your inventory method, you compare the total cost less your ending inventory. And the difference is your depreciation expense. So let's have an example. CDH has 100,000 tools at the beginning of the year, purchased 80,000, sold 35,000 tools. The ending is 75,000. What is the depreciation? So what is the carrying amount? So we have 100 beginning plus purchase of 80 less the sale of 35,000. So we have here 145,000 less 75,000 ending inventory. So our depreciation is 70,000 pesos. 70,000 pesos. Okay. So in case, guys, there is a change in estimates, any change in estimate is accounted for prospectively. I know that you already know that one. Okay. I think we will end our discussion here on your depreciation. We end our discussion on your depreciation. So I will record your impairment, including your revaluation, also your wasting asset and investment in associate. Okay, so please wait for the recording of this following topics. Hopefully, I can record it until tomorrow so that I can give you the recording tomorrow. Okay, so I will not take too much of your time now. I know you still have